My name is Fade Dragonteer, and I consider myself a fan of the anime medium. Sure, there are some subgenres that appeal to me more than others, but I've been fascinated with the style since before I can remember. Over the years, I've watched the anime movement evolve and grow, and my taste grew with it. As I matured, I found myself looking for more maturity in the media that I consumed, and anime delivered on every level. Not only did I find the kind of content that's considered for mature audiences like violence and sexuality, but also some of it was deeply thought-provoking. So today, I'm going to share some of my favorite anime films aimed at adults. We'll be focusing on feature-length films, as that format's generally going to deliver better production value and storytelling than a multi-season series. Keep in mind, this list is based purely on my opinion from a lifetime of exposure, and it doesn't necessarily need to match up with your own personal list. If you think I'm overlooking something, just let me know in the comments below. So without any further delay, I present to you my top 10 adult anime. Number 10. Tekken Concrete, a gritty 2006 anime by Studio 4C about a pair of orphans named Black and White who live in a rough suburb named Treasure Town as they endure hardships such as rival gangs, a Yakuza takeover, and an alien invasion, all while they deal with their own emotions and struggles as homeless youth. This is a very unique film in a lot of ways, most apparently in its art style, but also in its picking and choosing which filmmaking and anime traditions it follows and which it seemingly shuns. This film isn't afraid to break the rules, and the result is mixed in my opinion. While sometimes it works out beautifully, given some genuinely inspired moments, other times you might be pulled out of the film by a jarring cut or a sudden tone change as the story jumps between developing Black and White's organic feeling brotherly relationship and the intense violence that surrounds them on the hard streets of Treasure Town. Like most other manga-based films, things tend to get a bit complex with lots of characters and subplots, and I'm not even going to try to discuss elements like the insanely detailed geography of Treasure Town or the sheer mindfuckery at play later in the film. What I will say without spoilers is that for what it is, it's enjoyable. Along with the unique plot, you get lots of badass action sequences that feature the characters parkouring around the city and beating the ever-loving snot out of people. What's not to love about that? The animation is good. While the art style varies widely, going from hyper-detailed to simplistic or even crayon drawings as the plot demands, there's always lots of movement and an amazing amount of set details that keep your eyes occupied. The soundtrack does a great job at setting the tone of the film, shifting perfectly between the stark contrast the film presents. It really works well to hold the whole thing together. So like every other film I've reviewed, I suggest checking this one out for yourself and form your own opinions. I personally enjoy it. It's refreshing to see some of the rules broken sometimes. Number 9. Metropolis, a beautiful 2001 anime loosely based on the manga by the legendary Tezuka Osamu, which is loosely based on the 1927 silent German expressionist film with the same name by Fritz Lang, which is one of the first ever feature-length films in the science fiction genre. While this anime doesn't strictly follow the plot of either of its namesakes, it does have an undeniable cosmetic similarity to the previously mentioned silent film Metropolis, as well as sharing similar themes of class struggle and man versus technology. It also seems to be heavily influenced by film noir and other anime such as Akira. I would say it actually hovers a bit closer to Akira than either the original Metropolis or even the manga given the structure of the plot and animation style, but that's just my opinion. It mirrors Akira in having a plot that's extremely complex and difficult to explain, especially without spoilers, so I'll just say that it's set in a 50s-inspired science fiction city where the labor is done by intelligent robots as we follow a Japanese private detective, his young assistant, and a robot who are seeking to arrest a Dr. Lawton on human rights charges such as smuggling and trafficking of human organs. Before that can happen, the doctor is murdered and his lab burned down, leading the detective's young assistant to befriend a mysterious female android whose secret runs deep into the roots of the city. Like I said, I don't want to spoil too much, so I'll just leave it at that. It's a great science fiction mystery film, and I really encourage you to check this one out for yourself. While the plot is complex, it is well written, and I really enjoyed the hard-boiled detective as well as the relationship between his assistant and the android girl. Where this film really shines is the visual spectacle. While some of the CGI now looks a bit dated, for the most part this film is a beautifully designed and animated visual feast that still stands up as one of the better looking anime to date. I also love the soundtrack. The mix of actual songs from the 50s and a brilliantly scored original soundtrack complements the 50s feel perfectly. This is a must-watch if you fancy yourself a fan of anime. I'd suggest this film if you're interested in getting into an amazingly detailed living, breathing world full of intrigue and unique characters, or if you're just interested in seeing one of the most beautiful anime of all time. Number 8. Perfect Blue, a 1997 psychological thriller by the legendary anime director Satoshi Kon, follows the life of a woman named Mima, a beautiful young pop idol who gains a following through her talents but is convinced by her management to leave the music industry to pursue roles as an actress, much to the disapproval of a deranged stalker. As she immerses herself into a shady world which becomes exponentially more and more exploitive in the pursuit of fame, mysterious murders begin to surround her. Mima is plunged into a deep sea of doubt and a serious identity crisis surrounding her decisions which rocks her to her very core. Without spoiling too much, I'll just say that this is one of the best psychological thrillers of all time, in any medium.
Originally planned as a live-action film, budget cuts pushed this title to an anime format, much to its advantage. As the line between Mima's career and her reality begins to blur, Satoshi Kon's masterful control over perception and perspective is fully realized as he leads the audience on an accelerating thrill ride of intrigue and violence. Visually, this film is stunning in the way that only 90s anime can be. It makes full use of the medium, taking advantage of the contrast between bright and dark anime styles to further obscure the difference between fantasy and reality. Like other great 90s anime, it also has some pretty graphic scenes in both the R-rated and unrated versions, which actually serve to elevate this film beyond many American-made thrillers by off-putting the viewer with disturbing imagery of a highly potent psychological nature. It's worth note that this film is based on a novel and deviates pretty heavily from it. There's a few other adaptations in Japanese media, such as the live-action television series and a film, which I'm told are more faithful to the source material. Overall, this is an intense thrill ride that shouldn't be missed. I highly suggest this film if you're a fan of psychological thrillers or anime. It combines the best of both worlds to create one of the most memorable animated films of all time. Number 7. Redline. Released in 2009 by Madhouse, this science fiction racing anime may very well be one of the most action-packed and fun animated films I've ever seen. We follow a washed-up second-rate racer named JP through a strange universe of diverse characters and exciting fast-paced action. After losing the Redline qualification race to a green-haired beauty with nice boobs named Crab Soniche, he's given a chance to compete when many other racers drop out due to the announcement that the Redline will take place on the heavily militarized and not at all welcoming Robo-World.
How dare these criminals disturb our galaxy's order with their barbaric and immoral intentions! Robo-World is a symbol of progressive humanity, whose only aim is to live in peace in the universe! I will never allow this Redline scum entry into our sacred homeland!
The plot isn't the strongest element of Redline at all. While there's a ton of fun characters and subplots, it's all really just an excuse to get these wacky racers cruising around at insane speeds with lots of explosions and boobs. And I'm totally okay with that.
Oh god, I gotta change my pants!
Visually, this is a stunning film. Adding to the previously mentioned eye candy is some extremely fluid animation and a bright comic book-like aesthetic. The music selection mirrors the visual intensity and action well, with an appropriate upbeat techno soundtrack. Redline also has a prequel OVA of sorts called Trav of Fist Planet, which doesn't really live up to the raw excitement and grandeur of the film, but does add some backstory to some of the characters. Redline is just pure dumb fun. There's never a dull moment in this extremely visceral film experience, and I highly recommend it. So if you haven't yet, go check it out. Number 6. Akira, one of the most influential animated films in history. Released in 1988, it opened the doors for mature Japanese animation in North America and is still remembered by many as one of the best anime of all time. The film is a 2-hour adaptation of an over 2,000-page manga, so the first viewing of the film might be a bit disorienting due to the lightning-quick pacing and short amount of time to introduce side characters and subplot elements. It takes place in 2019, 30 years after an explosion that devastates Tokyo during World War III. We're painted a grim picture of the future, the art direction using gritty tones to depict a post-apocalyptic city in constant conflict. Without going into a scene-by-scene analysis, the basic plot follows a biker gang and two specific members of it, Kaneda and Tetsuo. During a police chase, Tetsuo encounters a strange child and gets infected with an entity that draws out his psychic powers. Tetsuo's abilities quickly grow, and as he becomes a national threat, it's up to Kaneda to attempt to reason with his former friend as his power spirals out of control. There's clearly a lot more to it than that, but you guys don't want me here for 10 minutes recapping the plot, right? Nah, that'd be a dumb idea. Overall, I enjoy this film. While there are several subplots that go nowhere and could be fleshed out more or just completely removed, I can really get into the setting and feel. The narrative can be a bit easy to lose if you aren't completely immersed in the plot, because the film moves at an unforgiving pace, and if you blink, you might miss something. The soundtrack suits the movie well, accenting each scene as appropriate. It's not exactly the kind of music I jam to, but it serves its purpose. The animation is some of the best to be seen in years, and is still many levels above most anime of the current day. Every frame is packed with detail, and every movement is fluid. It's no wonder that this film is still used as a benchmark in animation. Akira is still rightfully one of the most popular anime of all time. Each element of this dark and gritty work of art comes together to create a masterpiece of modern animation. Number 5. Wings of Anamase. Wings of Anamise? Oniamisu? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Anyway, it's the 1987 film debut of Gainax and follows Shirotsugu Ladot, who enlists as a commander in a failing Royal Space Force despite several of the previous pilots being killed during missions. With war looming on the horizon, he struggles against a slew of personal, technological, and political hurdles, while forming his own philosophy and overcoming great odds to become the first man to survive the trip into orbit. While struggling with the purpose of his mission, as well as the nature of his own existence, he comes into the acquaintance of a religious woman and her daughter who offer him some comfort and inspiration. This one's a pretty heavy watch, both with its themes, but also most cuts exceed a 2-hour runtime, and while the animation is great, it's not super heavy on action, or levity for that matter. What really stands out about this film are the deep political and philosophical themes, as well as the subtle but deep character interactions and vastly detailed world building. I find the technology design in specific to be fascinating. Some elements of technology are very advanced, while others not so much, and it's just kinda interesting to see how the film intentionally plays with that. There are some absolutely beautiful character building scenes with little to no dialogue. It's downright poetic at times, but then there are also some very awkward, controversial scenes that were cut in some versions of this film that will most likely drastically change how you view the main character. Despite how you feel about that, this is a very well written and animated film aimed at adult audiences that opened doors for many other classics in the following years. While it may not be as recognized as other anime of its era, Wings of Anamase stands out as one of the great films that helped define the beginnings of what I call the golden age of anime. Number 4. Pat Labor, or Pat Labor, or Peito Reba, depending on how lame or Japanese you are, takes place in Japan in 2002. Being historically accurate, giant fighting robots are widely employed among the workforce. To be fair, this was made back in '89, and I guess they were a little over-optimistic about the future, so we'll cut them some slack. The plot is a complex mystery relating to a virus that infects and spreads through the operating systems of the labor robots triggered by a mysterious source. It's up to the Tokyo police force to find and eliminate the origin of the virus before it's too late and the labor robots in Japan begin to rampage. The characters are really charming and hold the whole thing together. Each member of the force has their own distinct personality and investigation methods, from the optimistic new recruits to the too old for this shit Captain Goto, to the trigger-happy Unit 2 Commander Oda. Every member contributes to the team, and indeed the film, in their own unique way. The more I say about the plot, the less you'll enjoy it on the first watch, so I'll just say that it's a really fun mystery thriller with a pretty satisfying conclusion. It stands as an early testament that anime can balance serious tones with some level of levity. It also has a fair amount of beautifully animated robot-on-robot action, which was also used in a really badass music video back in the day. There's actually kind of an interesting backstory here, and I guess since we aren't talking much about the plot, I got some space to fill. So in the early 90s, Manga Entertainment had some kind of deal with the band KMFDM, which allowed the band to use anime clips in their music videos, while manga used some of their songs in promotional materials. So the band kind of became associated with late 80s and early 90s anime, despite their music not appearing in any actual anime. So it's just kind of a random, weird, obscure anime culture thing, but that's why you might notice the band pop up in various anime-related fan media, such as some of the videos that may or may not pop up in the annotations right about now. Anyway, back to the review. I can also suggest checking out the 2 sequels, which deliver on a similar feel and production value. The second film has to do with a leak in the Japanese Air Force, and the third one has a giant monster. It's good times. I've not seen the TV series or the live-action film, so I can't really vouch for those in the same way. I've also not played the video games either. Well, I played the PlayStation 1 game to capture the footage that you're looking at right now. I can't get past the first level though. I mean, it's in Japanese, but I figured out that I have 6 bullets, but that only dents the guy, and after that, the only thing that I can do is just like bump into him repeatedly, or go into like this rock, paper, scissors thing that I can't ever seem to win. So that's nice. The movie is good though. Number 3. Ninja Scroll, one of the most violent and therefore awesome anime. It holds no punches in the amount of gore or the amount of gratuitous nudity. It also stands up decades later as quite possibly one of the best animated action films of all time. We follow a wandering mercenary named Jubei who's poisoned by some weird old man into fighting against 8 demons. Set in feudal Japan and filled with historical drama and intrigue, this film also delivers an overabundance of blood, boobs, and badassery. You know, the 3 Bs. The action moves at a rapid pace as Jubei brutally cuts down each of the demons one by one. Well, kinda. He technically kills 3 himself, but the first one was like a blind dude that he tricked, the other one was a 50-50 effort with the old guy. I'll give him the third one, but it's quite possible he might have just lucked out with that one. He thinks he killed the rock dude, but that guy actually gets killed by his own boomerang sword thing due to poisoning from a female ninja who he assaulted earlier in the evening. Jubei does cut this bee dude's leg off, but he's totally killed from the bees living inside him trying to get out and avoid drowning. I mentioned this is a super violent anime, right? In typical demon fashion, the rest of the demons are off by each other as they scheme and vie for power, except for the last guy. I won't spoil his thing. It's good though. The whole thing is good. Well, I mean, if you can handle the hyper-violence. There was also a spin-off TV series. I caught a few episodes, but it's nowhere near the movie, and it's like not the worst anime I've seen, but I'd give that a pass and just stick with the film. Clearly this isn't an anime for everyone, but if you can stomach or have a taste for Tarantino levels of gore or just pure visceral action, I highly recommend it. Number 2. Macross Plus. Released as a 4-part miniseries in 1995, this film still holds up as one of the most beautiful anime of all time. We follow Osamu Dyson, a slacker pilot who refuses to move up in rank due to his love of flying. When he's transferred to an experimental program, he finds himself competing against his past rival named Gold Bowman, both using unique new technologies. Things escalate even further when their old flame named Miyun Lone shows up with her Vocaloid AI pop star named Sharon Apple. Anyway, as the tests go on, Gold tries to murder Osamu during the test flights, but it's cool because Sharon goes rogue and attempts to murder Miyun and then presumably the planet with a giant Macross. I'll explain what a Macross is in a second. Anyway, the point is that Osamu and Gold team up to save the girl and the world. So this is a great standalone film, but it is part of a larger, decades-running franchise. I'm no expert on it or anything. I've seen this and some of the original series that became to be known as Robotech back in the 80s. The basic idea of that is that there were two races of people, the big people and the little people. The little people built a quote, super dimension fortress, end quote, named Macross to defend themselves from the big people. And that's pretty much it. I do remember a subplot about some chick becoming a pop star, so there are some thematic similarities. I'm probably missing a few nods, but I figure you're just as well off watching this as a standalone, cause that old 70s animation is just too dated compared to this, which is just as beautiful as the day it was created, and I feel it's gonna hold up as one of the most beautiful animated films for decades to come. The Sharon Apple concert sequence in specific stand out as extremely creative both visually and musically. Really, the soundtrack and audio is in my opinion straight up the best soundscape of any anime ever. With English versions of the dialogue delivered by an all-star cast including Bryan Cranston and Richard Epcar, as well as English versions of the film's beautiful soundtrack, it stands above just about everything else. I still listen to a few of the tracks from the soundtrack quite often. It's actually that good. Macross Plus stands out as exceptional in every aspect. It has the perfect blend of character, emotion, and action executed in the most spectacular way. It's pretty much an essential watch for any fan of the medium. Number 1. Ghost in the Shell. Considered by many to be a benchmark in animation and a gold standard to which all other anime should be judged. We follow Motoko Kusanagi, a human intelligence in a cybernetic body, as she and the other members of Public Security Section 9 pursue a mysterious hacker known as the Puppet Master. This film grapples with heavy philosophical themes having to do with the definition of self, technology, perception, and perspective. As Major Kusanagi sees more and more parallels between herself and the Puppet Master, she begins to question the nature of her own existence. This film is known for its beautiful animation. Every frame is packed with detail, and the action is kinetic. My favorite sections, however, are when the film slows down and 4 minutes are spent to show off the detailed universe that we're immersed in as the rain washes over the city. It's the kind of thing you really can't get from other films. So, there's been a ton of adaptations over the years. Originally there was the manga, and then this film, and then there's a few sequels. They're pretty decent. There was also the standalone Complex series, which was also pretty good. There is a prequel series named Arise. The episodes are good. I reviewed one of them. I was kind of let down by the movie, but I think I might have overhyped myself. There have been a few video game adaptations over the years. None of them really did the property any justice though. Then of course there was the live action film, which was pretty much what you'd expect from an anime adaptation. If it's any consolation, this is the best one we've gotten so far. I think my honest biggest gripe was the invisibility suit. I get that you can't just shave ScarJo and CGI off her nips and have her go nude, but something about the suit just really looked kinda off to me. I don't know. As far as live action anime adaptations, we're still not quite there, but at least there was some effort put in to be true to the nature of the original work, even if it doesn't quite reach those heights. In regards to the original Ghost in the Shell film, my thoughts should be pretty clear at this point. It's a masterpiece. Very few anime can even approach it on any level, and it still holds up now, decades later. It's one of the most thought-provoking films of any medium, with a beautiful soundtrack and some of the best animation of all time. So those are my top 10 adult anime based on a lifetime of experience. How does my list compare to yours? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you really enjoyed this video, consider supporting the channel. Every little bit helps. Once again, this was Fade Dragon Tier. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.